spelled Mattel.
All right. So, solving quadratic equations. Just like when you solve a regular equation, the rule is the same. You got to get the letter by itself. So you do the opposite to get rid of all the numbers that are on the same side. To get rid of a plus 1, you got to subtract 1. These are like terms, so you can combine them. That's why you do that. And then to get rid of a 2 times, you divide by 2. So, what do you got to do to get rid of a squared? Square root. Opposite of squaring is square root. If I square root that, they cancel the squared and the square root, leaving you with x. And then you got to square root that side, which we will just round to the nearest. Usually they do 2 decimal places, like on the last few problems yesterday. So square root of 6 is 2.449. So that would round to 2.45. The 4 would round up. Okay? Now, here's the trick on these equations. And this is going to come into play later in the chapter when we do these. Remember what happens when you square root, like on yesterday's assignment? Square root of 49 is what? 7 and?
-7.
Right. You always get 2 answers on a quadratic. Okay? Now, like I said, that's going to come into play later in the chapter when we're doing these. Eventually, we're going to have graphs of quadratics. If they already have the graph for you, and they ask you what the solution of the graph is, the solution is wherever it crosses the x-axis. So this solution is -2 and 1 are the 2 solutions. And it's a quadratic, so it's going to have 2 solutions. That's why in this, you can't just put that. It's plus or minus 2.45. Now, as we see here, so far what we're doing, it's always just the positive and the negative, same number. Eventually, though, they can be different numbers. There and there. Okay? Remember there was 2 of those that we did yesterday, or there was maybe more than that had no solution? If you had a graph that had no solution, any idea what it would look like?
Yeah. There would be no line.
Oh, it'd be the same one.
If I drew the parabola on here, what would it look like?
Sideways.
Would it not go
Sideways is a hyperbola. That's if the y is
So it'd
squared.
be like above the x-axis?
Right. It just wouldn't cross. It wouldn't intersect anywhere. You can still graph it. It just doesn't intersect. Or it could be going down like that. Okay. So when you solve this, again, these are exactly like yesterday's. All we do is square root it, and you got to remember you get 2 answers, plus or minus 12. Square root it, and what do you get?
Nothing.
No solution.
Okay, wait, we were saying about this in knowledgeable.
Oh, yeah.
About what is the square root of -1?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
he said it was
we
just
said no
-1.
solution, and
We
he said
said no
-1.
solution too.
Yeah, if you remember yesterday when we were going through this, there are negative square roots. They're called imaginary numbers. The square root of -1 is called just an I, which stands for imaginary number.
Somebody said I and it was wrong. It was -1. Yeah.
I is equal to -1, yeah.
Wasn't this shit going on?
Yeah.
Because they said awesome.
They said I?
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah, and then, we said no solution, because it's like, what's the negative, negative first or something like that.
They didn't want me to say no solution, so they said like,
Yeah,
knowledgeable?
yeah.
Square root of -1 is I, and they got that wrong, huh?
yeah.
They maybe didn't know that.
Because they said I and I'm like, that's right. And they're like, no, it's wrong. Incorrect. And I'm like,
You look it up.
Okay, now on these, this is a little different here. This one, all you do to get the x by itself is you square root it. Remember, it's plus or minus square root of 11, again round to the nearest hundredth. 3.316, which would round to 3.32. Okay? Now if you notice here, it's not just a plain old x squared.
You have to divide by 3 first.
Yeah, you gotta get the x squared by itself first. So you gotta remember, do any adding or subtracting first. You gotta get this out of there. It's a minus, so you add 75. We can't square root yet, because the x squared isn't by itself. What do you gotta do first? Divide by 3.
You good?
Now,
Great.
now that the x squared is by itself, you square root, square root. Everyone knows what that is, I hope? Plus or minus 5. Okay? So this one is like this one. You got to get the x squared all by itself first, so you got to get rid of the minus 22 over with the other regular number. Since they're on opposite sides, you do the opposite. It's minus, so you add. Okay, you can't square it yet because there's a 2 multiplied times it. So you do the opposite, you divide by it. Now the x squared is by itself. So you square root, x is plus or minus 6. What that means is if we were to graph this parabola, it would cross at positive 6 and negative 6. And since the x squared is a positive, it would be like this. It would open upwards. That's a
So
sketch of
here's
that.
all the answers of both buildings.
Actually, the solutions are just where they cross, right there. And then everything on the line would be numbers you could put in for that. This one would cross at plus 5 and negative 5. This would cross at plus 3.32 and negative 3.32. Now again, I just wanted to point this out. Eventually, it won't be the same number, just plus or minus, like that one I showed you. Okay, then we do have a couple others, very similar to yesterday's. Okay. They want you to solve this. Again, it's just using a calculator. Maybe I should move it over here. Okay, so if we had 3 plus or minus 5 square roots of 2 divided by 4. Yesterday, all we had was the b squared minus 4ac, remember, under the square root? Here we've got a whole thing. Now, this plus or minus here means there's going to be 2 solutions. So you got to do 2 things on your calculator. First, you got to take 3 plus 5 square roots of 2 divided by 4. That will give you one answer. Then you got to go 3 take away 5 square roots of 2 divided by 4. Okay, so it's just 2 problems in one. Again, this is leading up to something that we're going to do later in the chapters for solving quadratics. So, when you type this in, you would put in the 3. Now this is on these calculators. Plus 5. Then you got to hit the square root key, which everyone, you know, it's the second function. It's in yellow, right above the x squared. So when you do that, it puts in the square root sign with a parenthesis, right? Then I put the 2. Now, this is where people mess up. Because it's divided by 4, if you just press divided by 4, it's gonna be wrong. Because this whole part here is divided by 4. This whole top. So the easiest thing to do is before you do the divided by 4, after you punch that in, what should you do? Press enter or equals.
You don't have to put it in parentheses,
If you're done, if that's all it is, you don't need it there. If you're putting in stuff after it, then you gotta put it. So I press equals and then press divide by 4. And round these again to the nearest 100. 2.51, which would round to 2.5 or 2.517, which is 2.52. Then we got to do this one. 3 take away 5 times the square root of 2. Again, press equals and then divide by 4. Negative 1.0177 6. So that's 1, 2, oh yeah. So that'd round to 0.2. So those are the 2 solutions. This is a quadratic. So if this were graphed, it would cross at 2.52 and negative 1.02. So it'd look something like that once we get to the graphing. Okay, so we got a few problems like this. We got a few where we got to solve the equation. Ever understand this? You do 2 problems in one? All right.